leaves are already starting to turn color, and Marge and I get in the pickup. We decide if we're going to go over the pass and see all the leaves and go back out to the desert. Now is the time to do it, because winter is closing in on us. The sun is shining brightly, and some of the sagebrush is in bloom as we start down the little 2-track road to our daughter Annette's property, where we'll be spending a few days in the old trailer house that we moved in there just for camping. We go past Twin Buttes and on till we come to the property. It's about 8 miles from the nearest improved road. When we get out to the property, we decide that if we're going to go get thunder eggs, it looks like a great day for doing it. We don't want to go into that spot where you get thunder eggs if there's a chance of rain, because if it rains on you while you're in there in a vehicle, I guess you just wait till it stops and dries out. We pass through the rolling hills of the Owyhee country, and then the big Owyhee Valley, and then up the other side and on we continue across the Owyhee Desert. Across the broad, fertile Owyhee River Valley with its fertile farmland irrigated by pumping water directly out of the Owyhee River. The life-giving water makes it possible for them to have some great alfalfa fields, raising alfalfa of extremely good quality. Through the town of Rome and on we continue. Then across the bridge, across the Owyhee River, and up on the plateau again, and on toward our final destination. We will now turn off the main paved road onto a fairly good graveled road, which takes us towards Sucker Creek and Leslie Gulch, two very spectacular places that are a must to visit anytime a person is in this area. The hills stand tall as if to hide the spectacular view that these hills are concealing behind them as we start down toward Sucker Creek. The scenery starts getting a little better all the time till we come to the canyon itself. The hills are dotted with sagebrush and bunch grass, which is all turned real brown this time of year as we move closer and closer to the spectacular canyon in Sucker Creek. Sucker Creek Canyon is getting deeper and deeper with spots of volcanic ash on the sides. This is from the Yellowstone volcanoes, and also plenty of basalt rock on the cliffs above Sucker Creek. Sucker Creek is probably on one of the must-do spots of all rockhounders because of its gem quality rock formations all through the canyon. The scenery becomes more spectacular as we go farther and farther down into Sucker Creek Canyon. We see cliffs with numerous little caves and lots of slide rock and more cliffs across the river. Most of these formations were laid down from the Yellowstone volcanoes many centuries ago. Tiny little Sucker Creek is dwarfed in the bottom of the canyon by the spectacular scenery all around, but Sucker Creek gives life-giving water to many species of wild game that are running around these hills. This chucker rooster crosses the road in front of us with defiance, like he might just take us on. Somewhere around about a half mile before we drop clear down into the canyon where Sucker Creek Park is, we take a left off the main graveled road onto a very rough two-tracker road, which requires a darn good four-wheel drive with lots of clearance and a low gear as we grind up on top the first summit of the way to the Thunder Egg digging spot. When we reach the summit, we can look across and see the tailings from many a rockhound digging thunder eggs up here. If very steep roads and heights bother you, probably this isn't the place for you, not to mention the roughness of all the rocks in the road. But we could walk up here just as well, and it would only be about a half-mile hike. But we've got a good vehicle, so we're going to go for it and grind our way to the summit of the first ridge where we can look over into Thunder Egg country. We reach the summit in just a short while where we can look over the top and see many a tailing from Thunder Egg diggers. And then we've got an even steeper grade down the other side, so we'll ride the brakes a little bit and ease our way down the other side, across a little valley, and then up another rather steep slope on the other side, where we'll park and go searching for our thunder eggs. We park at the only flat spot we can find to park, and then walk the 200 yards up the very steep hill to where the thunder egg beds are. We start finding them almost immediately, and our buckets filling up in a hurry. We're getting lots of nice thunder eggs, and we'll cut these open, and they have excellent color and agate in them. And unlike some thunder eggs, most all of these are filled with good agate. These thunder eggs are deposited in sort of a whiter type soil, and so we just dig a little that away and they just start rolling out. You can find numerous ones just more or less stacked on top of each other. So once you get here, it's no problem finding all the thunder eggs you want. This is a double take here. You not only get your thunder eggs, but you're overlooking some of the finest scenery that you've ever laid your eyes on in the Sucker Creek Canyon. Looks like I've been voted as the one to pack the thunder eggs down this steep little trail to our vehicle. I guess maybe her vote counts twice and mine doesn't count at all. I think that looks to me like woman's work, packing them down. But just to keep peace in the family, I'll make the sacrifice and pack them down to our waiting pickup below. And I hope I got her stopped digging, because I don't want to have to pack too many more down. I finally got her stopped from digging, and so we'll get in the pickup here in just a little bit and head on out of here. But it looks like maybe she's got a couple more buckets for me to haul out. That's a little more than I was expecting, but it'll just take a little while to reach the pickup, and then we'll put it in four-wheel drive low and grind our way up that very steep grade out of the canyon. First we go down a real steep slope, which is washed some, and it's just rougher than a cob, but we can sort of go around the edge of it, miss a few big rocks that have eroded out, and get to the bottom, and then up the other side. We have two choices of roads to take once we get to the bottom to start up the other side. One of them's bad, and the other one is too, so I guess it doesn't make much difference which one you choose. We're just trying to keep from putting some big old dents in our pickup, which could happen real easily here. I think I'll take the fork to the left this time. The one to the right has sort of a sharp little curve you have to go around with a big rock right in the middle of it, and that rock could reach out and grab a fender on the vehicle when you're going by. So we'll ease across the bottom of the valley and take the left steep fork up out of here. And if it were to come a thunderstorm, I think you'd be stuck in here till it dried out, because that wouldn't be a good place to spin out at all. The bright spot in coming up out of here is we see some wild birds, some of the Hungarian partridge, I believe they were, and then a patch of sunflowers. I believe those rascals were in here eating the seeds out of the sunflowers. So we'll soon be to the summit and out of here. It was beginning to look like it might come a little thunderstorm, so that sort of made an urgent hurry to get up out of here before it hit. I'd hate to slide sideways on this road. After we reach the summit, I can look across and see what looks to be a little string across the mountain. And what that was, it's an old pioneer fence. Then, as we move down the road, it's kind of a day when rattlesnakes like to be out, and we saw 3 of them in just a little while. The rascals always like to try to hide from me, and so I need to take his picture, so I'm going to go over and find him. He's being very polite.
Go pester him.
No, I'm not going to pester him.
As if to say, you get one step closer, and I'm going to let you have it with all the venom I have in my head. And Marge isn't helping things. She's back there saying, he's going to bite you, he's going to bite you. Well, it looks like we've got our thunder eggs, and there's a brown, ugly cloud hanging over the sky. Looks like it might come a thunder shower, so we're going to head out. We're going to go back to the trailer house back in the desert and figure out something different to do for the next day. The old pioneer fence is stretched for miles across the hillside. It was sure a lot cheaper than buying barbed wire, but it was a whole lot more work. We go back down through the valley of Rome and see the rich irrigated alfalfa fields down below on our way back to our trailer house. The distant cliffs on the horizon lets you know why the early pioneers named this place Rome. They said some of these natural landscape formations look like the towers of Rome, so that's where it got its name as Rome, Oregon. Might be a little confusing, but that's what
He skipped over the 3. He didn't pick up the one.
We get back to the trailer house, and the little antelope ground squirrel are out in force, and it's almost like they're asking, where have you been today? We need some peanuts, and we need them now. These little ground squirrels can pack off all the peanuts you can furnish them, and in most cases, they'll eat a few, and then they bury them in little holes and very carefully cover them over and conceal them. Then that night, the kangaroo rats come out, smell them under the ground, dig them up, and eat them. So it's a never-ending cycle for these little rodents. The whole idea is to move rapidly when you're out in the open and grab a peanut and get the heck out of there under some cover. I guess a few generations of these squirrels have learned this because they're prey for most any of the carnivores, birds and foxes and coyotes, or anything pretty much likes a nice fat ground squirrel. But these squirrels, we've been noticing them all summer. We have about 7 of them here, and not a one of them has disappeared to a coyote or an eagle. They stir up as much dust as an elephant, though, as they take off, and it doesn't take them long, and they're back in the sagebrush. We put a little dish of water out for them as well. These little ground squirrels, according to the book, never have to take a drink in their entire life due to the fact they can make their own water with the hydrogen and oxygen. but that doesn't mean that they don't like a drink of water if it's handy. And besides, they're burning scads and scads of energy with their constant running back and forth. They're more a solitary animal, and they're all for themselves. This little guy was trying his best to get 2 peanuts at once, but he hasn't figured out the knack. There's one of them here that's figured it out, and he'll just sit down and shuck the peanut and then put it in his cheek pouches, and so he can put several peanuts in there. That his face swells up like he's got full-blown mumps, but he can take them off, and I don't know what he does with them. Probably buries them someplace so somebody else doesn't get them. There's absolutely no end to the energy of these little guys. I think if you were to have a 100-pound bag of peanuts here in a little bit, you'd have totally none left, because they don't play out and they don't give up. They just keep packing them one at a time away, except for the little guy that's learned how to shuck them out, and he can take more than one that way. We had an extra year of corn, and we're running dangerously low on peanuts, and Marge said that corn was making me too fat, so she suggested that we give it to the little ground squirrels, and they would rather have peanuts, but when there are no peanuts available, they can stash a lot of those kernels of corn in their cheek pouches. You could see his cheek pouch swelling up as he goes along, stuffing it as full as he can with that corn. The idea is to hurry and get out of there with that before somebody else gets it. So he's stuffing his cheek patches just as full as he possibly can. And then he's gone for a little while. He'll come back and get a drink of water. And we gave him an apple here. They don't know what to think of an apple. But when the corn and the peanuts are gone, that apple starts looking better and better all the time. These little guys are only about 2 inches tall, so you can't see much from that low in the ground. So they've learned to stand on their hind feet some of the time. That gives them another couple or so inches. But better yet, they climb up on a sagebrush, and then they can look around and see where the peanuts are. Well, so much for the ground squirrels. We're going to go out and see what we can find to do today. And no, unfortunately, the ground squirrels can't go with us. Somebody's got to fort down while we're out doing other things, and so the ground squirrels can do that for us. We just went a short distance just to the hot springs and explored a little bit around here, and when we get back, the ground squirrels have all retired for the day as the sun majestically sinks down below the Steens Mountains in the distant horizon. The ground squirrels go to bed before it gets dark, but then after dark comes the nocturnal animals, and that was the kangaroo rats. Just a whole bunch of them came in here, and I tried to get Marge to hold the light while I took their pictures, and when the light would hit them, they'd scamper off. And they hop just like a kangaroo. They set up on their tail and make 5-foot lunges. But Marge couldn't deal with a rat.
Here's where all those kangaroo rats live. Real handy here to come over and beg.
The next day, we decide to go over and try out a little hot springs that we don't use too often, but it's real nice. The White Horse Ranch is gathering their cattle in off the range. The range is already all used up, all the grass is gone, and so they'll bring the cattle in and turn them in the hayfield since the haying's all done. And then they'll keep them there for quite a while, and then later they'll move them out into the low desert for the winter. When you work on a big ranch like this, there's 1.5 million acres and 2,500 head of cattle. Somebody's got to be in that saddle most of the time. So we move through the big valley and head directly toward the hot springs, with the distant hills standing guard over us as we move down the road through the valley near White Horse Creek. There are a few little seep springs come out and furnish nice hot water, and sometimes volunteers will make just a little place where a few people can soak in some of these hot springs. So they're a real treasure, and usually when you're there, you're by yourself. We get back to the trailer house just as the sun is being put away for the evening. First thing the next morning, we decide to head down and see if we can dig a little bit of petrified wood down near Disaster Peak. So we'll get a good early start, hopefully find
right there.
Is it petrified wood?
Yeah, just a second. It's petrified wood. I'll show you. See, it's petrified wood.
Yeah.
It was right here. You finding anything?
Nope. Not yet.
Hard at it with a pick, huh? Well, looks like Tom's got his limit. Whole bucket full.
After digging our 25-pound limit, it's time to go to the hot springs and wash a little of that dirt off from us. And maybe while we're there, we can just go ahead and clean up some of our petrified wood so we can see what we have, and it looks pretty darn good. We each are allowed 25 pounds per day, and then there's a yearly limit of 250 pounds of petrified wood. And so it's a pretty generous yearly amount that you're allowed. And you're not allowed to sell any of this wood or even give it away. So you have to be really careful with that. But after we got our petrified wood and everything and returned back to our campsite, it's time for us to be heading home. We go through Burns and stop at a store, and there we see a familiar looking little camp trailer on an antique car, and that sure looks good. The 40s are born again, it looks like. Now we take that trip across the desert for 400 miles till we get home. Before we get home, the sun is setting low in the sky, and what a nice trip again to the solitude of the desert.